House and the Senate are back in session this week. It'll be the last week before the Memorial Day recess, and both chambers have a lot of business on their plate as they continue the process of getting the appropriations bills done. But we're following several committee meetings. On Tuesday, the Natural Resources Committee in the House will mark up legislation related to the Puerto Rican debt crisis. We're following this very closely because, of course, there are a number of credit unions in Puerto Rico that have been affected by this crisis. On Wednesday, the House Appropriations Committee's Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government is going to mark up its appropriations bill. We follow this bill very closely because NCUA has some funding in the bill. This is also a vehicle that could be used for policy writers. So after the markup, we'll be looking very closely at the committee report to see if they've given any policy directives to agencies in this process. And then on Thursday, the Senate Small Business Committee is going to have a hearing. It'll be an oversight hearing on the Small Business Administration's 7A loan program, a program that many credit unions participate in as they try to meet the needs of America's small businesses. So last week we saw a lot of activity in advocacy. We had the final rule come out from the Department of Labor on overtime, and credit unions need to be looking at CUNA's compliance resources on this rule because it's going to change the thresholds on who qualifies for overtime pay. So credit unions should look very closely at the material that CUNA is putting out on that. We also saw a hearing in the Senate Commerce Committee on the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. This is a hearing that CUNA asked the committee to hold several months ago. We're really grateful that the hearing was held, but even more important, we are grateful that the chairman of the committee, Senator John Thune, in his questions to the witnesses, raised several of the concerns that CUNA has regarding the Federal Communication Commission's Telephone Consumer Protection Act order. This order changes the way credit unions and everyone else for that matter can use the telephone to reach out to consumers. And for credit unions, it's pretty important to be able to collect debts, to let folks know about potential fraud activity. So we're very concerned about the FCC's order, and the hearing last week helps articulate and accentuate those concerns. We hope it'll lead to future congressional action. We also saw a very important hearing in the House Financial Services Committee on the CFPB's arbitration proposal. The CFPB put this proposal out earlier in May, and so the fact that there was a hearing so quickly after the proposal was released, a good indication that there's some concern in Congress. And we saw that come forward on a bipartisan basis in the hearing. Now, credit unions don't use arbitration clauses that much, but the proposal would in effect take that tool out of the toolbox, and we've got some concerns with that. We think that there's probably a lot that the Bureau could have done as opposed to de facto banning these proposals. And so in the comment process and through hearings like this, we're going to try to make those cases. Last week we also saw the first NCUA board meeting led by the new chairman, Rick Metzger. And Chairman Metzger set a brand new tone in these meetings. There wasn't a lot of action items on the agenda, but they introduced a new concept of board briefings, and they had board briefings on NCUA's effort to modernize the exam cycle process and modernize the call report. Both of these issues have been very significant priorities for CUNA and the leagues as we've sought to reduce the frequency of exams, but also to modernize the information that credit unions are giving to the agency in order to ultimately reduce the burden of exams. So we were real pleased to see this approach and to see the NCUA board shed some light about how they're going to go about reducing the burden of exams and modernizing the call report. Looking forward, we have a very important hearing next week held by the CFPB in Kansas City, Missouri on small dollar loans. This is an issue that we have been following since the CFPB released its outline of the proposal last year. It's a critically important issue for credit unions for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that many credit unions were founded for the purpose of doing this type of small dollar lending. You go back in the history of credit unions 70, 80, 90 years and you see credit unions formed by folks coming together to pool small dollars together to make loans. So this hits at the heart of what credit unions are all about, and the proposal is something we're watching very carefully. We've seen some signals from the Bureau that they like the way credit unions generally offer these products, certainly relative to the for-profit industry, but how they're going to treat the credit union products in this proposal remains to be seen. So we'll be there at the hearing, watching it closely. We'll definitely be commenting on the proposal after it's released. We'll be engaging, as we have for the last several months, with our Consumer Protection Subcommittee and our Advocacy Committee to make sure that when we're articulating the credit union position on this proposal, we're hitting it right on the head. This is a very important proposal, and we're going to encourage folks to review it and to use power comment to submit their views to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.